Alrighty. Hey, kids, teachers, parents. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to some of you. Let's just say good day. How you guys doing? Any guesses what time it is where I am in South Africa? Don't know if any of you are watching the cameras, but there'll be a clue there. Welcome to today's class, guys. So we're doing something a little bit different. I believe you may have been watching this show on cats. It's on the website, and I hope you've enjoyed all the different activities as well as the quiz. Hope you guys had fun doing the quiz. And now for the next half an hour, I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you have on cats that we see on Africam. Maybe if you've got any other questions from watching the cameras, we're going to be watching the live cameras while we do the class, just in case something really interesting pops up, because you never know. There's also been some nice highlight videos from the last couple of days. I don't know if you guys have been watching, but just talking about predators, the last 2 days, there's been cheetah, leopard, and lion on the cameras. So there's some wonderful questions coming through. Great one from Henry. How are you doing, Henry? Thanks for joining the class. And I love the question, why do leopards hunt in trees and other cats don't? So it's an interesting one. So leopards can hunt in trees, but let's straighten this one out. They'll hunt predominantly on the ground, just like lions and cheetahs, because they'll hunt things like warthogs, impalas, which is a type of antelope, and they'll take their kills up into the trees to get away from other competitors, other predators. What do you think might be a competitor for a leopard? Henry, I wonder if you can put your answer in there. So they go up into trees to get away from competition, although I have actually seen them hunting twice in the tree. Once they were hunting monkeys. It was actually a young leopard that was successful. This was in Botswana. And the second one actually hunted a squirrel, but was unsuccessful. The squirrel was too fast. So I hope that answers your question as to what do they do in the trees. And I wonder if you can tell me who their biggest competitor might be. There's a couple. And if anybody else is listening, maybe you can join in and see if we can get the answer. How are you doing, Anna? Thanks for joining the show. That's a great question, Anna. Why do tigers like water more than other cats? Exactly why, I don't actually know. But I do know that tigers love water, and they sometimes wallow and sit in water. And I suspect one of the reasons might be to cool themselves down. But otherwise, generally speaking, you're 100% correct. Cats don't like water. But exactly the reason why, I'm not sure. Because, in some areas, especially in India, where you find tigers, you do get lions and leopards and cheetah. And they don't seem to love the water as much as tigers either. I'll have to look that one up. Great question. How are you doing, Olympia? From Italy? Why do leopards live mostly alone? So that's also quite an interesting one. In fact, all the questions are going to be quite interesting because it's a very interesting topic, I find. But leopards are quite small. right? So they're relatively speaking small animals if you compare them to something like a lion, which on the other hand is an opposite. They live in prides and groups, right? And let's take the lions, for example. They have safety in their numbers, but they have to catch bigger things more often, right? Whereas an animal that's by themselves, like a leopard, doesn't need to catch big things and doesn't need to catch them that often because it doesn't need to share it. So leopard's quite happily moving around on its own, doesn't need to share the food, and has developed to become a tree climber to get away from the competition. So that's one of the reasons why they live on their own. Yes, Anna, you've got a question right. I'm going to wait and see if anyone else comes up with an answer as to who is leopard's competition. You're right, Anna. One of them is lion. There's one more that's a big competitor to leopard. It's a bit of a curveball in the question department because we didn't really talk about other predators. That's a bit of a hint. But in the beginning of this week's show, this week's class, we did mention one or two other animals that were predators but not part of the cat family. See if you can work that one out. How you doing, Alex? Nice to have you on the show. Hope you're learning a lot. I know I learn a lot every time I look at the cameras and get all your wonderful questions. And your question is quite an interesting one. Why do carnivores eat meat and other animals don't? So there's some interesting, there's probably a lot more to it than the answer I'm going to give you, but we'll keep it simple. So if everything ate the same food source, there would be a huge amount of competition, right? So over the years, things have developed to feed on different things. Some feed like porcupines will feed on roots and bulbs and the bark of trees. Other animals will feed on the leaves and the grass. Some eat fruit. Some eat a bit of everything. Some only eat insects. And then you get the predators that predominantly feed on meat. And because they're big and powerful, and some of them living in big groups, they then start to eat bigger things like buffalo, and giraffe, warthogs. So it's got to do with competition. Everything's developed and changed to feed on different things so that there's not too much competition. Sam, I like your question too. What makes the cheetah faster than other cats? Well, so one of the reasons why cheetah is so fast is to be a successful predator, and it predominantly hunts during the day. And the reason why it hunts during the day is maybe by now you can guess the reason, because it seems to be a trend. It's to get away from competition. So if you take a lion and a leopard, hyenas, they all hunt during the nighttime. So something like the wild dog, the cheetah, they're much smaller, they're not as powerful, but they've developed different eyesight to hunt during the day, right? Wild dogs live in packs, so they can do relay races. They don't need to be individually fast. But the cheetah, because you either find them, the females by themselves and sometimes groups of males, but essentially they only have themselves to help hunt. And by being faster than their food, they're very successful. What's interesting with a cheetah is, firstly, their bones are slightly lighter. If you look at the structure of the bones of a cheetah, they're not quite like a bird, but they are quite almost hollowish, as opposed to a dense bone of a lion. That helps them be lighter. Their claws constantly stick out and they're straight. They're not hooked. Because you imagine running on the ground really fast with hooked claws. You'd catch in the ground all the time and pull them off. So that's another development. Their claws are straight so that they spike into the ground like running spikes. They've got quite long bodies. They've got big gaps between their ribs. And as you guys are all so super smart, I'm sure you might remember this. Those muscles between the ribs are called intercostal muscles. So some very large words. Yeah. But the intercostal muscles are much broader, wider, they're bigger on the cheetah. So it can stretch right out and curl right in like a teardrop and explode back out. And that's how come it can be so fast, so quickly. They've also developed a slightly different tail. Their tail is flat. And so that they can use that tail at high speeds to take really sharp corners. So a cheetah is really fast and designed that way, again, to get away from competition. I saw, Anna, you got the other competitor of the leopard. And, oh, Henry, you got it as well. Let me just see if there's anybody else here. So we've got lion as one. And some of you got hyena. 100% correct. In fact, they all compete against lion. Number 2 is hyena. Then it's wild dogs. And wild dogs are quite high up because they live in groups. So they can outcompete something like a leopard that comes in position number 4. And then it's cheetah down the bottom. So the cheetah, the only thing going for cheetah is speed. How are you doing, John, from Australia? Yeah, you've got an interesting question here. Why is a cheetah not part of the Big Five? So the Big Five is actually a hunting term. In other words, humans hunting animals from a long time ago. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad that's quite an old concept. But the Big Five was originally understood to be the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt. And so something like a cheetah is actually quite timid. Looks quite aggressive, but in the old days would have been quite an easy one to hunt in comparison to a lion. But now that we're in the age of conservation, and in particular ecotourism, for example, coming on safari and taking photographs of these wonderful animals with your camera, In other words, shooting them with your camera instead of a gun, which I think is a much better idea. It was just brought over to come and shoot the big five with your camera. But I think taking a photograph of anything is wonderful, including this crocodile that we're looking at. Those of you that are watching the camera, so John, I hope that answers your question. I know you've got another question. Ooh, which African cats have the best eyesight? That's a tough one. I would say leopard and lion are pretty close at night. They've got pretty good eyesight, but I can tell you a story about a cheetah. I think cheetah probably have some of the best eyesight. I was watching a cheetah once on a game drive. She was on top of a hill and she kept looking across a big open field. I would say at least 2 kilometers away, maybe 3. She was looking into the shadow and into the setting sun. And she didn't stop looking in that particular direction. And I took my big binoculars and I looked into the shadow that a hill was creating as the sun was setting behind it. And I couldn't see a thing. And for about 20 minutes, she watched that area. She didn't take her eyes off it. And then she got up and she went directly in that direction. First started off as a walk, then a jog. We quickly drove around as fast as we could and got ourselves to the foot of this hill, in other words, into the shadow. And at the base of the hill was a single springbuck, which she came straight towards and hunted it successfully. And that day I learned that cheetah have incredible eyesight. But one thing to remember with eyesight with all predators, it's quite an interesting one, is that their eyes are positioned in the front of their head, like mine and yours. Baboons and monkeys are in the same category. But predators see really well in 3D, just like we do. So long distance, but only in front of them and slightly to the side. We can pick out shapes, and so can they. They pick out movement really easily. But if you compare them to the antelope, their prey, their eyes are on the side of their head. So they don't see very well in front of them. They see in 2D, but they can have great peripheral vision, another big word, peripheral vision. Peripheral means on the sides and almost to their backs. So they've got a much better view all around them, which is really important. And they don't pick out shapes, but they pick out movement really well. So long distance visual predators are great. But the antelope, something like an impala, are also very, very sharp all around them. And that's why predators need such good vision. How are you doing, Danny? You've got a question on cheetah and why cheetah have tear lines down their face, but other big cats don't have them. So to start with, those tear marks, they actually start a black line under their eye and then come down their nose and then finish off in a very wide bar of black at the base of their mouths. So because they hunt during the day, they actually have dark lining under the eye. If you look at leopard and you look at lion, they actually have whitish lines under their eyes. So they need the light to reflect into their eyes to help them see at night. Whereas the cheetah, because it hunts during the day, actually needs to reduce the reflection of the sun in order for it to see better. Right? So that's one reason. Then, as it runs down the side of their face and broadens at the mouth, if you look at the size of a cheetah's mouth, it's actually relatively small. But because there's a big black mark all the way into the corner of its mouth, it actually makes its mouth look bigger than it actually is. It's a mimic. In other words, if a competitor, let's say a leopard, comes to try and chase a cheetah away from its kill, or maybe tries to attack a mother's cubs, you'll see that the leopard will snarl and show its white teeth and make that mouth look much bigger than it is with those black markings down the side of its face going to its mouth. Quite an interesting one. Oh, did you all hear that sound? So we have an elephant drinking. This is live, those of you that are watching. This is at Naledi Dam, and I wanted to keep the camera on Naledi because earlier I heard monkeys alarm calling. Now baboons are alarm calling. And that's a heads up for next week's class. We're going to be talking about tracks and signs. But let's keep watching this camera as I answer and discuss your questions. Maybe a leopard or a lion might join this elephant for a drink. Nina, I'm not too sure about your question. Hyenas and wild dogs sometimes eat together. Are you asking if they do? If that is your question, no, they don't. Both wild dogs and hyena will compete for the same food. A hyena will typically chase the wild dogs away and eat all the food for himself. The only animal that sometimes get to eat with each other, the sneaky jackal. I don't know if you've seen jackals. We get black-backed jackals and side-striped jackals. But the jackal sometimes, now that's a small carnivore, maybe like a fox or a coyote, depends on where you are in the world, but they're small. And sometimes when lions have killed something large, like a buffalo, they almost let the jackal come and feed with them because it's not such a big competitor. But if hyenas see wild dogs eating something, they will chase them off as quickly as possible. Anna, you've got another question. Where's the best place in Africa to spot leopards? Ooh. Well, I tell you what, on the cameras that we have, northern South Africa, Naledi is a very good place to see leopards. Lately, I don't know, last night we had a leopard. We can actually go to that video. At Olifants River, and it walked right in front of the camera and smelt the camera. In fact, it jumped on top of the camera. There, that's it there. So that's in northern South Africa, a place called Baluli Game Reserve. Where Naledi is, that's in the Sabi Sands. But Botswana is also very good. I've seen great leopards in Zambia. So there's quite a few options. But have a look at this young leopard. The baboon's calling at the leopard as well. It's staring straight at the camera. We spoke about their eyes earlier. You can see the two eyes looking straight at us through the camera. And it seems very interested. It's a young leopard that's very intrigued. And the baboons that are calling are baboons that sleep in the tops of the tree. It comes, just look at that. It's sneaking right up to the camera. Now you can see, does anyone remember what the spot pattern is called on leopard? While we're watching this beautiful cat. I'm not sure if it can hear the movement of the camera, but it's very intrigued. Beautiful pattern on its chest there and on its neck. So every leopard has a different spot pattern or necklace around its neck like that. And when people do research and study these animals, that's one of the ways they tell them apart. Anna, you ask why their eyes are glaring white. Very good question. So behind the eye, so inside the eye, there's an extra layer called the reflective tapetum. You'll have to look that one up or look at it with your mum and dad or teacher. It's basically like a mirror that takes the available light, in this case the infrared or sometimes just the moonlight, and it sends the light back into the eye, essentially keeping that light in the eye for longer so it can see the shapes in front of it, and that's how it gets the night vision. So things like when you look at the cameras at night, crocodile, you'll see that it's very bright. This leopard or hyena, but that's what helps it see at night. Now let's see, where does it go? This is the camera turning all around. Leopard is very entertaining. You should keep watching the cameras at night. There's been wonderful leopard. I think this leopard might still be around tonight at the Olifants camp. And the baboons don't like it. Yes, indeed, Henry. The spot pattern of the leopard are called rosettes. Excellent. So that was the leopard that we had. I'm not sure if we get another view, but it spent a long time. You see there's a trail there. Leopards like to walk up and down those trails, and the baboons roost up in the tops of the trees. Very noisy. We'll talk a lot about the tracks and the signs that we have in the wild, including alarm calls, in next week's lesson. So we'll just keep that sound in mind. There was another clip of lions that I want to show you quickly before we get to the end of the lesson. And we spoke about the black underneath the eyes and how lions have white under their eyes. Just have a look at this lioness giving us a perfect view at cat eye pan of that white around the eyes. So that again is the opposite to the cheetah. Because they hunt at night, that helps them see at night. See, all these animals are really well adapted to their specific environments. you listen carefully, you can actually hear them drinking. How are you doing, Emma? No, leopards are not the same as jaguars. Jaguars, they're very similar though. They definitely are. Jaguars are a little bit bigger. Jaguars you find in South America, whereas leopards you find predominantly in Central and Southern Africa, as well as some parts of India. But a jaguar it's a bit thicker. It's a slightly bigger animal. It's got very similar markings. It just doesn't have as much of an two different shades. It's one shade of gold with black mottling. But their heads are bigger, their shoulders are bigger. They're more in the range of a lion size, the jaguar. And then, of course, jaguars also don't mind water. We were talking about tigers and water, but jaguars do spend a fair amount of time crossing rivers and hunting in some parts of, in particular, the Amazon basin and the Pantanal area. So they're a little bit different, but they do look similar. Goodness me, kids, we've come to the end of today's lesson. Thank you so much for all your wonderful questions. I think I got to most of them. If you think of any more, you need to email them to kids@africam.com. And on Thursday, and we'll send you the time because it varies from where you are on the planet, but it'll be around 9 o'clock here in South Africa. So on Thursday, we're going to have another question and answer session, another question and answer class on this week's topic. So if you do think of any more questions, I will see you on Thursday. You can send emails, but you can also ask more questions in the question box. Keep watching the cameras because you might find all sorts of things coming onto the cameras. Those of you that haven't done the quiz, you should definitely do it because everyone that finishes the quiz and all the quizzes after the 6-week program will get a junior ranger certificate from me. So keep asking questions, keep watching the cameras, and I look forward to seeing you all or being with you all on Thursday morning again. Have a wonderful day, kids. And you too, parents and teachers, thank you so much for your time. Until Thursday.